Hey folks, Luke with Alternate Arms, and this is the Stoeger XRD50. If you haven't seen my previous video on this, I did a video 2 days ago where I actually did a full review of this launcher. My main point of contention was that this thing did not make great power. So, what am I going to do? I'm going to pull out that pesky valve block. Let's do it. Alright folks, now the way we're going to do this is I'm actually going to grab the camera, flip it around to this side, face it down to the table, and then we're going to take this thing apart. I could not find any videos on how to take this thing apart, and to be honest, these are all relatively similar, so I think we'll be able to do this pretty easily. But the promise is double power, so let's see if we can get 20 joules out of this launcher after pulling out that valve block. Now, before we start with this teardown, I do want to make a note about the tools that I'm using. So I have our DeWalt drill here with the Phillips head bit. Instead of using a typical valve tool, I actually opt for these bent pliers. For me, this is a lot easier to put down pressure to take out that valve. And just in case, I didn't think there were any pins, but I got a punch and a hammer just in case. Now, you may be wondering what the piece of paper here is for. Just because this is my first time taking this launcher apart, I usually like to label all of the screws. So I'll start with body screws, for example. So I can just put, let's see, body screws. Now, to start, we're going to go ahead and remove this magazine. So, magazine gets removed. And let's go ahead and get to taking out all of the body screws along this launcher. Alright folks, so thankfully you have the power of time lapse. I do not. But 13 body screws later and this thing is ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and start from the bottom when it comes to separating the clamshell. This should come apart pretty easy. Oh, yeah. Very easy. Okay, and yep, that's a launcher. What I'm going to do is, prior to removing the internal assembly here, we obviously want to take all of the tensioned portions out of the launcher. So I'm going to peel this back and remove. It's important to keep this all together for obvious reasons. So I'm going to set that aside. Okay. And it doesn't look like we have to deal with any other screws, so maybe this was a bit of a moot point, but it's good standard practice anyways. And we'll go ahead and remove this. Okay, with our valve back here, that means obviously our block is going to be behind this brass disc. What I'm going to do is, again, if you have a valve tool, use the valve tool, but I've had much better luck with these bent pliers. So you just get the bent pliers on the two holes. I'm actually going to do this behind camera so that I can tension it down really well, but you're going to, oh, this wasn't even that tight. Okay, never mind. You're going to take your pliers and put some downward pressure and twist. And just like that, without destroying this poor brass cap, we were able to get this off. Now, after a few threads, there we go. Okay. Looks like we have our spring, and that would be our valve block right in there. Usually with launchers, you have to actually pull those things out. But if this is built like the Snow Peak Defender, which it is, we have just doubled our power. Now, let's get this thing back together, hopefully quicker than I took it apart, and we'll get this thing rocking. You may be wondering, should we put the spring in? Well, the whole purpose of the spring was to keep that valve block tensioned, so with the valve block gone, the spring can now also be gone. We're going to start by putting this brass cap back on the rear of the launcher, just to secure our valve. Now, with this brass cap reinstalled, I always recommend, before you put the launcher back together, test fire it. So I'm going to go grab a CO2 real quick because I forgot to bring one. And let's go ahead and test fire this thing. Now, got a CO2 in here. We're going to go ahead and slide this in. And we'll go ahead and see if we can pierce this and shoot the thing. Okay, indicator popped out, meaning it's ready to fire. And let's shoot. Whoa! Good Lord. You hear that? I don't know if that comes through on the mic, but this thing is loud. Wow. So just for reference, guys, when this thing is bone stock, you get around 25 to 30 shots out of it. We just got 8. So definitely more air. Let's see if the length of this barrel can make use of all the extra air that we just added into the system. Let's put this thing back together. So, popping out the CO2. Oh, rookie mistake. Okay, I got extremely lucky. Not too many of these were blown off the table, but I guess when you're depressurizing the system, make sure it's facing away from the very light and small objects that are easy to lose. Anyways, what we're going to go ahead and do is we have the barrel, and this is the rod that goes under it that actually controls that ambidextrous release for the magazine here. And we obviously have the components for that. So these are the sides of the ambidextrous mag release. This is the spring that goes on the end. Sorry. This is the spring that goes on the end. And then this is the pin that holds it all together. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to go ahead and set this inside of the launcher. With this in the launcher, now all we need to do is just put the components back in. And I'm actually going to put that spring here in last. So that's already in. Before putting the rod in, we're going to take one of the sides of this ambidextrous mag release. We're going to go ahead and place it down. Now make sure the actual grab side, if you want to call it that, is pointed towards the rear of the launcher. So I'm going to go ahead and set that in. Now it is set in there. And I'm going to insert the rod. Okay, line up those two holes and insert that rod. Now, last thing we need to do before getting the clamshell on is we're going to connect the two pieces of that ambidextrous release. And now this spring is sort of the crux, but thankfully, inside of this rod here, it's actually hollow. And with that spring inserted, we just push down right there. And just like that, it is all together. All I need to do is get this clamshell. Clamshell goes back on top. Nice and easy. Now, I'm going to get all these body screws. We're going to put them back in the launcher. Like I said in the beginning, if you're using any sort of power tools, which I suppose I wouldn't necessarily recommend with these, just make sure you have it on an extremely low torque setting so that you don't accidentally strip the screws or the holes that they go into. Screws can be replaced, but if you end up stripping these holes, you have to get a new body or use a bigger screw, and that's a pain. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these screws in, get them screwed in, and then we will chrono this launcher and see if it truly lives up to the name. All right, now with the launcher back together, let's go ahead and go out there and chrono this thing. All right, folks, now today we're going to be running the Mercury Rise 2.9 gram rubber steel projectiles. These are the rubber shell with a steel core. 2.9 gram projectiles. We're going to see how much power we get out of this launcher. Now, before I fire it, let's talk trade-offs. Obviously, you get less shots out of this launcher, but do I expect you to be able to reload this thing in a self-defense situation? No. We want those first 6 shots to count. That's why we mod these in the first place. So a reduction in capacity, does that really matter? No. Let's pierce it, see how much power we get. Again, 2.9 gram projectiles, and here we go. 381 FPS, it's quite a bit more power. Okay. 365, 340, 320, 305, 228. That last one sucked. And that will be all. Okay, so looks like we got roughly a 20 FPS reduction amongst each of the subsequent shots. That last one was kind of crappy, so we're going to count it because obviously that's part of the testing. I'm going to go and do those calculations. I'll be right back with you. You got to admit, not bad on the power. Just to remind you guys, this is a $130 launcher. All I did was remove the valve block, which took me a whole 10 minutes and doubled the power out of it. So let's get back into the office. Well, there we go. Almost 20 joules, not too bad. Would I consider this acceptable for kinetic self-defense? Probably not still. I mean, this makes for a great pepperball launcher now. Stock numbers, we got a little less than 10 joules, which doesn't sound correct. These are rated for either 7.5 or 13 joules. I assume this is the 13 joule variant. So we got a 50% increase in power by removing that valve block. Again, not too bad. For 130 bucks, huge shout out to High End Less Lethal for sending this launcher out to us. I really do appreciate you guys. If you want it back, I'll put the valve block back in, okay? I know it looks like I threw it, but it's right there. I can see it. So thank you guys so much again for watching, and have a wonderful day. See you guys next time. Bye-bye. One more thing. I promised I'd do it. This is actually their hot sauce that they sent us. Apparently it is 3 out of 5 on the heat intensity. So helllesslethal.com. Let's see if their hot sauce is good. I'm not too good with hot sauce usually. Just gonna dab it on the end of my finger here, and we'll try. Don't worry, I washed my hands before doing this. My wife's gonna kill me for that. Holy, that's hot.